This is Squash Alchemy. I'm Lisa Camilleri. My guest today is Leonardo Capparelli from England. Leonardo is the owner to the Football Domain Academy based in London. The Football Domain Academy specialises in youth football performances and self-development for kids of the ages of 9 to 15. And you have the ambition of mentoring 1 million juniors through soccer coaching. So thanks for joining me here, Leonardo. And yeah, great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on your show, Lisa. I know a couple of weeks ago it was the other way around. I was interviewing you, so It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, fantastic. So I've interviewed a lot of squash players and some squash coaches. So today we've got a soccer coach, and I think as coaches, I mean, you know, you can specialize in your own individual sport, but as a coach, there's so much more that's involved through mentoring juniors, and it's great to be able to talk to, you know, coaches from all different sports and different backgrounds to cross over and just hear the story of what coaches are doing in other sports. So I think we can kick things off with just tell us a little bit about your football journey, when you started playing, what level you got to, and etc. Yeah.
Okay, to be honest with you, my soccer journey is quite a short one, in the sense that I stopped playing at the age of 17, or 17, 18 it was. And one of the main reasons was because I just didn't enjoy my experience playing. It got to an age where I was probably on the wrong team, but it basically got to a point where the team I was on, every single week we would have, there would be fights. Our coach would start arguments with players on the team. We'd get chucked out of leagues. Our games would get suspended, and it was just pretty much a really terrible experience. And that has really pushed me and inspired me to get into coaching. So to answer your question, I didn't really play at a high level, but I played through all the age groups of youth soccer. So I started playing from the age of 9, and played at various clubs in and around London. Good clubs, bad clubs, good coaches, mediocre coaches. But then it got to the point when I got into my teenage years, so 16, 17, 18, where I just decided that I had enough. And it was probably just because of the experience that I was going through at the time, which I decided to hang up my boots, as they say.
Yeah, tough. I mean, I guess it's, you know, something as a squash player, we play, you know, an individual sport. But when you talk about the dynamics of a team and all the things that go with it, with a team sport, it's, I mean, like you said, you're probably on the wrong team. So therefore you didn't fit in, and it just didn't click. So.
Yeah, it was a shame, because I was a very enthusiastic player. I like soccer, being on that team and just turning up to games, turning up to training sessions was the highlight of my week. Like, once it was over, it was like, oh, I have to wait another week for our next training session. So that was quite upsetting when it all came to an end, but I think it was the right thing to do at the time. And then at the age of about 18, 19, I went on my first ever coaching course, which here in the UK, it's the FA Level 1. And I'd done that, I think I completed that at the age of 19. And from then on, I went into coaching.
You started coaching at a local club. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about the progression from, once you got your level 1, then how did you, move into a coaching role, and when did the, your academy kick off?
Yeah, so I completed my level 1, and then after that, just to get some experience in coaching, I started to volunteer at a number of clubs in and around London. Just really basically assistant to other parent coaches. So the role was really just sometimes doing the warm-ups, or picking up cones, moving cones around. I'm sure you've done it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just doing the doggy work. Also, like for example, in games, I had to be the linesman to help out the coach. So just sort of volunteering and getting into that environment of a soccer team, soccer club. Then once I'd done that for a couple of years, I then decided to go into actual like team management. So a local team of mine, they were looking for a coach. So I volunteered. I put my hat in. I think that's how you say it. You put your hat in. And I said, right, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. So I started. It was an under-9 boys team, like first time ever kicking the ball, playing. And I basically had to learn everything by myself. So how to speak to parents, how to plan sessions, how to motivate a group of 9-year-olds to just stay focused for two to 3 minutes, how to communicate with the opposition about location, where we're going to play. So just small little things like that, which I had to do it myself because the club I was at the time didn't really support me. So I sort of had to just use my initiative and go with it. And I'd done that for 2 years. So 2 seasons I'd done that. And then after two years, I finished university. So I studied a Bachelor of Arts at Greenwich University here in London. So I'd done a physical education and sports science degree. Once I completed that, I got a job in the US. So I got a job as a coach as well, working for one at the time. They were, I think, the second biggest coaching company in the US. So I went to the interview because they came to the UK to do interviews. I got in, and after I finished my degree, I moved straight to the US. And I think that first year in the US taught me a lot about myself, because it was just a huge culture shock. And also it was my first sort of professional coaching role. So from simply volunteering to now getting paid to do something is a big jump. Because your responsibility goes up, and you're seen to parents as like a role model. You're seen to parents as the professional, like the one that knows everything, when really and truly I probably at the time had maybe 4 years of coaching experience. And it was funny because when I moved to the US, my first coaching role was actually with an under-8 boys team, and it was their first year playing soccer. So it was like I left the UK to go and coach somewhere better, and I was given a team of the same level or even worse, and it was just like starting again. So yeah, no, the first year in the US was a really interesting experience in terms of coaching, because you coached in the US as well, so you sort of know how it's like. Parents are very competitive. Parents are very what's the word? They're very like egoistic about their kids. And if their kids aren't like if they're not like the main focus or the star of everything, then they let you know. So yeah, the first year in the US was a complete learning experience, which really taught me about myself. And after that, I moved back to the UK for a couple of months. And then I got offered another opportunity to go back to the US, but this time it was with a different company. And then when I went back, it was so much better because I now knew the culture, I knew the environment, I was more experienced, and it just went from there. I think the last 5 years that I spent in the US were my real education, which I was never taught at school. So that's really how it ended up. And then after 5 years of working in that company, as all entrepreneurs tend to do, you start to get annoyed with your manager. You don't want to be told what to do every time. So I decided to step away from it, and I left my full-time job in the US. I moved back to the UK, and I started the Football Domain Academy. So I basically put in all my years of experience from the age of 19. I created a vision, a plan, and when I got back to the UK, I put it into practice. You know, it's what I planned, what I envisioned is slowly becoming reality now, which is crazy, but that's why I'm always very grateful to the US, because it really opened its doors to me. It gave me a hard lesson of, you know, how to live away from your parents for the first time, how to cook, you know, how to learn how to cook, how to be responsible with your money. You know, that's definitely something in the future I want to help young athletes become more organized financially. So yeah, I mean, and then that's really how the Football Domain Academy came about.
Yeah, wow. You're coaching the market between 9 and 15-year-olds. Where did that sort of spark come from? Like, did you always think, all right, well, this is the age group that I want to focus on, or did that sort of change over the years as well?
I think I'm still working it out. No, I think I've always liked that age group, like that age range, just because from the age of 19 until now, the majority of my experience has been working with that age group. And also something I didn't mention, but I helped my nephew. I actually trained and mentored my nephew into a pro soccer academy here in London. So I started training him from the age of 9 through to 12 when he got scouted. So that sort of inspired me to work with that age group, because, you know, it was the first experience of actually getting someone into something meaningful. And then it's just another combination of experiences being in the US. Here, it's always been based around that age group. But also, as time has gone on, especially here in the UK, I've noticed that, I'm not sure how it is in Australia, but when kids get to the age of about 12 to 13, they tend to drop out of team sports. Just, I don't know, I think it might just be because they feel that they're just too old now. So my goal is to try and motivate, inspire kids to stay in the game for longer. That way that you know, their sole focus isn't, oh, if I don't get a pro academy contract, I quit the game altogether. No, it's like, That's one bit of what soccer actually is about. So if I can help them stay in the game for until they get to my age, then I think that's a huge, it's a huge goal of mine.
Yeah, sure. It's just interesting to hear, you know, as you coach, and I've always had I thought I was always more of a high performance elite, you know, but really I've just figured out that I really enjoy grassroots kids that are just starting in the sport, and so for me as well, it's always changing. So it's interesting to just see and hear from other coaches how they discover, you know, what's best suited for them with age group, ability, and whatnot. Also,
something I've noticed as well is when you work with elite players, they're the ones that tend to leave you after a certain amount of time, because they're always looking for that better or shiny object. Now, you know, you could be the greatest coach in the world, but those players are always looking for something else. And you see it in the top level all the time, like in the Premier League. You've got players that go from one club to the other constantly. So that's why I think my shift has turned to players that have some experience in the game, but they want to get to that next level. They're not quite there yet. Because if I can work with that player, I'll have that player for longer.
Yeah, sure.
And also I can have more of an influence on how I coach and I mold them. So that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. The Football Domain Academy was majority was for boys, but I've noticed recently that you've got some girls that are now joined the academy. So has the girls been a recent thing, and how have you had to adjust to different dynamics from, you know, coaching males to females?
To be honest with you, my focus at the beginning was always boys. And one of the main reasons is because when I look around London, where I am here, something I really see with boys is a lack of discipline. Boys are very easily led. Boys, going back to always looking for something else, boys are never committed to anything. You know, they're always looking for something better. And boys are just more likely to get into trouble. So my focus at the beginning was I wanted to focus on boys because of that reason. Because I think that when I look around London, I see boys, young males that are just lost. They've got no direction, they've got no purpose, they're just following the crowd. So if I can be, and also another thing, they've got no positive role models. And you know, if you speak to me on a personal level, I'm very against the school system. Like, I think the school system is very outdated. And the fact that some kids go into school and come out, you know, smoking, addicted to drugs, depressed, unmotivated, I think that just shows that that's not a great environment for some kids. Even though, like, education is important, fundamental, but I think there's a lot of teachers in our school system who are just not cut out for that role. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it was boys. And then I think during the lockdown, basically one of the boys in my academy reached out to his classmates, and we managed to get a few girls from that referral. But the message is always the same, you know, because I think the same help, the way that boys need help, I think girls need the same help as well. So,
and how
it's just I think a kid's problem.
And how have you adapted to coaching the girls? Has it been a bit of a challenge, or has it been fairly easy to adapt? Yeah.
Do you know what? I think what I love about girls is that they listen more than boys, and they actually absorb information better. Because it's like when I'm talking to one of the girls, it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. With boys, you're talking, and it's like you're talking to a wall. You have to repeat, and then it's like, then you ask them like, what are you thinking? And it's, oh, sorry, I remembered something. I'm like, oh.
Uh-huh. It's nice to hear that you, as a male coach, say that, because I just thought I was able to speak the girls' language better, because the same thing, like I would explain a drill or something and the girls go off and do it, and the boys they go off on the squash court, and 5 minutes later I walk on there and they still have no idea what they're doing. And I'm like, what have you been doing for the last 5 minutes? Why didn't you come and ask me? Or they just stand there and chat amongst each other. And I was like, maybe I'm speaking a female language, and maybe a male coach would, I don't know, do it differently, but obviously not.
And that's a huge problem, I think, because in society, I think women are more inclined to speak what they feel, whereas boys tend to sort of get on with it, but take negativity in, instead of actually being responsible and saying to the coach, listen, I've got no idea what you just told me. Can you repeat it, please? Whereas a girl will tell you that. They'll say, listen, coach, can you tell me again? Because I don't understand. A boy will just sort of go with the flow. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem as they get older, because that's how they get misled into doing stupid things.
Yeah. Interesting there. So with obviously being in lockdown, I've experienced a few of my juniors really lost motivation and lost the plot in regards to, I don't know if it was due to, we did a lot of goal setting beforehand, and a lot of the goals were set around tournaments and competition. And obviously all of those competitions have been cancelled, and still not knowing when they're going to be put back on. So, the whole focus for them to train day in and day out was, I want to be training because I want to do well in the next competition. And once that competition was cancelled, they lost, direction. And, and I was still trying to, get them motivated in other ways where they're focusing more on themselves as a whole, in regards to, mental side of the game, their fitness, their strength, do other things that you now have the opportunity to do, but they still lacked, I guess, motivation to be able to do that. Did you find you had the same problem? And if so, were you able to, how did you get your players, staying motivated and on track during this time?
It's a great question. To begin with, this lockdown has been a really big experience. And like between us, I think had I not been part of the mastermind group we're in, I would have really been lost. And I think I would have quit as a coach. But when this whole lockdown began, my intention with it was to stay consistent and committed to the kids, because I know personally schools weren't going to do it. And if schools weren't going to do it, there was only one person that could do it, and that was me. So I was really consistent with it, and I think I didn't miss 1 week during the whole lockdown. It was basically twice a week training and twice a week contact with me, plus homework. So I think in terms of motivation, when they were with me, it was probably, I don't want to be biased, but it was probably their best hour of the week, because it was something to look forward to. And even though it was online, but they were part of a group environment. But I do know, speaking to parents, that a lot of the kids did lose structure. So they lost structure in terms of like what time they're going to sleep, what time they're waking up. They started to eat poorly, which that's what happens when you're bored, right? Your refrigerator becomes your best friend.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of when they were with me, there was motivation and there was great interaction. But then there's only so much you can do online. But having spoken to parents, yeah, like they did tell me that their child was struggling. But you know, if I always say, if you can show up for your clients, they'll show up for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, I done my bit, they done their bit, and then now that we're slowly transitioning back onto the field, I can then, we can then carry on where we left off.
Yeah, right. Going back to like, in a football scenario, so you guys are in a team environment, do you do a lot of, how do you keep the team together? Like, obviously you got to do bonding sessions and to be able to, I mean, I guess, you've got the physical side, you've got your technical side, but then keeping the team together and being able to get them to work together at the best possibility outcome. So when they've got competition and they've got a match, they're all, pulling in together. How do you create that environment?
That's actually something I'm still trying to work out. I've never been very good as a coach doing team bonding stuff. I remember when we were out in the US and all the teams I was coaching, we always had like a parent manager of the team, and they were always very big on the sort of team party or team event, which, to be honest with you, I had to go because I was the coach, but if I could avoid them, I would, because I don't feel comfortable. So to answer your question, that's something I'm still working on as a coach. And having worked with other coaches and mentors, they have told me, like, don't always focus on your sport. Like, do things that take the focus away from soccer so that these kids can understand how to work as a group away from the field.
Mm-hmm.
But also another thing we do is, as included within the training we do, is we do mindset stuff. So mindset, confidence, discipline training, and that's all done through Zoom. You've been a guest on one of them, and that's had really, really good feedback, because parents say to me that's really helped with my child's focus. Because it's 1 hour of like, there's no distractions, they're just listening to you. They're not there messing around with their friend or looking at something else. They're actually honed in on you. So that does help, because it helps when, for example, you were asking questions, or one of our players were asking questions to you, the other person listens. So that helps with team bonding, because it helps with communication. What I'm listening to my teammate, what are they saying? So that's how we are doing it at the moment. But like I said, I'm still trying to work out what to do and to improve that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that, occurred to me, being obviously in a team sport. There's so much more that you kind of need to think about, that as an individual sport we don't really need to focus on. But I mean, yeah, like being a part of your your mind classroom set up on Zoom was brilliant, and it's something that I don't personally do, and I need to start adapting, because I I loved it. I loved being involved with the kids. And like you said, their focus was so good. And you're able to work on something that's, you know, specific for that full hour, whether it's goal setting, confidence, you know, whatever it be. So yeah, I thought it was really good. I guess this is a pretty, I don't know, it's something that I've been sort of thinking about with Squash Alchemy. Like, if there were no limitations, what would you want to achieve with the Football Domain Academy? Like, what's your big, you know, goal, or something that you really would love to achieve if there were no limitations?
Yeah, I mean, something you mentioned at the beginning was the reaching 1 million kids. Like, that is a target I've got stuck up in my wall at home, and I look at it every single day. And I think what I'm really realizing is that kids are kids everywhere. Like, the struggles the struggles Australian kids go through are probably similar or the same struggles that kids here in the UK go through. Because I think the world has just become more connected, and especially through social media, kids are watching the same things, so their emotions are similar. They have the similar problems. So I think, in terms of your question, my goal is definitely that, to try and help kids all throughout the world with becoming more disciplined, becoming more confident, become more positive. You know, in a world where there's so much negativity and it's so easy to be caught up in that negativity, just being a good role model to young people is fundamental, and it's something I wish I had, to be honest with you. Like, if I had someone like you, someone like me, you know, I think I would enjoy things much better, because it's, you know, it's a positive message that you're seeing every day.
Yeah.
Or every week.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful
And
thing.
yeah, and you know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said to him, I think parents, the conclusion I've come to is, parents are just providers for their kids. Obviously, you're a parent yourself, but I think parents just play that role of providing for their child, right? You know, they have to feed them, they have to clothe them, they have to keep them warm, which means that they need to look for someone else to sort of do the other things, the external things, the motivation, the discipline, which can be taught at home. Of course it can. But if you have someone, a positive role model that your child can look up to, that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, such a great thing to be able to be that role model and guidance to kids. I guess with being a coach, there's many opportunities where you have, you know, proud moments. I had one last week where I've got a young junior. He's only, I think he's turning 9 this year. Now, I've been coaching him for 2 years, and he hasn't been a player that has had a lot of focus, or someone who's been able to, you know, give his best. He's sort of a player that likes to joke around and, you know, be, you know, the funny man on court. So he was the only person that turned up to my lesson on last Wednesday. So I had 3 kids that couldn't make it, and I was like, all right, so this is a great opportunity to be able to spend some quality time, you know, with him. And he was actually one of my loyal customers that turned up to every one of my online Zoom classes when we were in lockdown. So, and that was really good for him, because he listened and he, you know, did a lot. Anyway, we finished the lesson and he did so good. And his mum texted me that night and said that he had the best lesson and this was his best day ever for him. So he's gone home and said, Mum, I just had the best day I've ever had. So you have these moments that, you know, as a coach, you feel really proud of. So for you, what has been your best, you know, and proudest moment you've experienced from being a coach so far?
Ooh, it's a difficult one. I think I've had many, and many have been through different stages. But if you were to ask me recently, I think the feedback I've had from parents during the lockdown, as we've transitioned back onto the field, a lot of parents have said to me that, you know, you were that light for my child during the whole thing, because I know they struggled a lot. And other parents actually, well, I had one parent who actually called their school and said to them that my coach has done more than your entire school for my child. Wow. So you can imagine how proud that makes you feel, right? So in terms of recently, that one, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, wow. That's a very, very cool moment. Yeah. Well, I'd just like to say, you know, you're doing fantastic things with your juniors. And I mean, I've been following your progress now for most of this, well, probably this year. And just seeing all your interviews, your podcasts, what you're doing with your team. And, you know, you're such a positive role model, and you're really trying to make a difference, which is, you know, something that is hard to find nowadays. So well done.
Oh, you're making me cry.
Come on. But yeah, thanks for chatting with me today. It's been good, sort of just, you know, chatting with Coach and yeah, seeing what's happening in other sports and like you said, it doesn't really matter, you know, female to male or even sport to sport. You're really, as a coach, you're there to try and make a difference and be the best that you can for these kids. Absolutely,
definitely. Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. Enjoyed spending time with you as always, and keep killing it over there in Australia.
Yeah, will do.